Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Gabe.
It's Caleb.
And today you're listening to another episode of the Positive Outlook Podcast. And Caleb, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about why we fall.
Absolutely. And before we get into the episode, I mean, this is kind of crazy, right? You know, if you guys have been a long-time listener of Positive Outlook Podcast, you would know we haven't had an in-person episode in forever.
Mm-hmm.
Very long time. So we did it. Shout out to Caleb for coming to visit. We're here. We made it. And happy Memorial Day weekend.
Happy Memorial Day.
I hope that you guys had
on Memorial Day.
Yes.
So salute our troops.
Yes, I
All
hope
the
that you
ones
guys
that
had a
have
great
fallen.
weekend. And remember to never forget the reason why you have this weekend, right?
And why we have freedom and the people that gave everything for us.
Absolutely. So thank you. Anyway, speaking of that, Caleb's enlisting.
I am. I know. It feels like, so I was just talking to Gabe about this on my way up here. And as I was on my way, I'm talking about how way back when we first started the show, I was planning on enlisting. That was my big plan that I had to set up everything else. And it's weird because I'm like listening to my 18-year-old self saying, oh, I'm enlisting soon. And I'm like, no, you're not. You got to wait 4 more years, buddy. I'm enlisting soon.
Yeah, you don't do that. I do. Yeah.
But yeah, as of this last week, actually, I am officially qualified and waiting recruit. I picked my jobs. I'm just waiting for them to pick one for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's exciting. Congratulations. That's so fun.
Thank you.
So, anyway, now we always do a question of the day. You know, it's a little new now.
And real quick, just because I've seen military people have to put this in their video, I in no way represent the views of the United States Air Force. I genuinely have seen people do that. I just want to make sure that's very clear.
You don't want to get struck down before you get in. They're like, what did you say in this episode of Positive Outlook? You're like, thanks for watching. Do you like and subscribe? Come on.
Yeah. All right. Question of the day. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So, question of the day. What is something that you faced in your life that you thought that you couldn't get back up from, but you did? And not only did you get back up, but you learned the lesson and you overcame it.
Okay, so I was actually going to bring this up later in the episode with some of our questions I have written down for us to talk about, but I'll bring it up now because I might as well intro. So as I said at the very beginning of the show as well, I was going to college.
Right.
And it made me so scared of the idea of going into debt because it's debt. You know, I'm trying to be financially better than the average person.
Right.
And so going into debt kind of goes the opposite direction of that. But it was to set something else up. And so, well, the way the situation worked out, it was all kind of funky, and I figured out the loan payments were due, and with the situation I was in, I could go back to school, I could try to finish in a full year,
Right.
and then have twice as high debt payments, which they're already insanely high,
Mm-hmm.
or I could come up with a plan B. And so as I started realizing how much money I've borrowed, and like I said, I'll get into more detail later, but I genuinely, like, it made my head spin, it made me feel sick, and right now I'm on paper a college dropout because I had to stop from the program, so I didn't want to go deeper into debt. And that's a situation this whole time I've been doubting myself. I've made so many mistakes that got me here.
Right.
And so I've for a while had a hard time moving past this mistake. And then I kind of realized I don't have to move past it. I can use it to fuel me to continue and start pushing harder, actually. And so that's something that happened to me that I didn't think I'd be able to overcome. And I'm not even I'm just starting the hill in June, actually. And so it's still terrifying.
Yeah.
But I'm here now, and it's like game on.
Absolutely.
What about you?
What about me? Yeah, always comes back. Forget about that part. Yeah, so, you know, as simple as it sounds and not as dramatic, right? Simply, over the last few years of my life, I really let myself go as far as like fitness and health and activity and everything like that.
Okay.
So, you know, I kind of did what everybody does, and you start to realize that you're starting to put on a little more belly fat. You're not as, you don't have as much endurance as you used to. You know, you're getting old, whatever. So, ultimately, I would just do workouts here and there, you know, and this wasn't just in my physical life, right? This was in my career, my relationships, everything. It was bleeding into everything. Just this overbearing thought of I'm just not good enough, right? I'm incapable. I don't have the discipline. I'm not a hard worker, you know, and that thought started to bleed into my life.
Yeah.
And as I continued to fail and continued to not be able to show up for myself, simply not because I didn't have the capacity, but simply because I just wasn't showing up for myself, I slowly reinforced that idea on myself.
And just a quick question, because I went through very similar thing. We've talked about it all the time, how weird that so I moved away, 3 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Like fully moved away. And our timelines have been so in sync with absolutely everything. But I wanted to ask you, you said that you knew you had, or it wasn't the fact that it was you didn't have the capacity to move through this. Doesn't that almost, when you're in that stuck position, make you feel more stuck, knowing that you have the capacity?
Absolutely.
And you've done it before, and yet you can't seem to do it now?
Yeah. So I like to use this analogy. It's, your mission's got to be greater than your fear, right? So, and I went to a Tony Robbins summit, right? And absolutely, guys, I know everyone says it. Tony Robbins is a legend.
He's the legend of legends.
Absolutely changed my life. I'm not gonna lie. Tony taught me so much about myself, and he made me look so deep inside myself, and I learned a ton about who I am, what I want, what drives me. And during this seminar, there was a story. This guy came on, and he told the story. His name was Trent, and he came on and he talked about your mission needs to be greater than your fear. And I'm like, duh, everybody knows that, right? Like the pain of staying the same has to be worse than the pain of changing. You're never going to change. But how do you make that pain be there, right? So he told a story about, it was an analogy of if you're in the middle of the woods, right? And you're just walking, you see a tiger walk up to you, right? You're face to face with a tiger. What are you going to do?
Hey, tigers. Sorry, I was just listening to our podcast on the way up here, our old episodes. And that was the animal I chose to be as a tiger. So
okay.
Tigers are pretty scary.
Yeah. So you come face to face with a tiger. You're like, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna hightail it. I'm gonna bolt out of there. Probably not gonna outrun it, but I'm definitely not gonna face this thing.
For sure.
So anyway, now here's the other scenario. So he was giving an example of somebody who has kids, right? I'll use my niece and nephew for example.
Okay.
So now I'm in the front yard playing with my niece and nephew. We're just out there hanging out. And then a tiger walks up. I'm the only thing between that tiger and my niece and nephew. You better pray for that tiger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's the same example. It's the same situation where you're face to face with your fear. You're face to face with something that you think is going to cause you pain. It's going to hurt you. It's going to drag you down. But what is going to make you either run or face it? So if you have something that's worth fighting for, if you have something that's worth taking the step, if you have something that's worth enduring the pain, you are going to take it, because people will only change when the pain of remaining the same is more painful than the pain of changing.
Absolutely.
So you need to ask yourself, and I think we talked about this in Habits, that episode, is if I lived every day like I did today, what would my life look like in 6 months? What would my life look like in a year, 2 years, 5 years, a decade?
And this is so important. I was actually, I work at a factory right now. And again, we'll get into this a little more in depth as we really get into the episode today, which is already getting juicy. I love it.
Yeah. I'm sweating already. My gosh. When's the last, come on, the energy's great. Yeah. When's the last time we were here?
This is exciting. Yeah. And so I was walking into work. I work with one of my roommates, and we're walking in. And this whole time, we've been listening to podcasts every morning. And that's another thing I wanted to mention based off of your Tony Robbins thing, but I'll get back to that.
Right.
But we were walking into work, and every day we get like 5 minutes of a break, and then it's back to the line for 2 hours. And so in those 5 minutes, we have all this 2 hour cycles to be thinking of a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And my thoughts get so deep. I'm actually happy that like this job's kind of helping me out more than I thought it would.
Yeah.
But throughout all this like healing and growing and learning and reflecting and all the things we're supposed to take time to do that I've been avoiding for a good 2 years probably. And I was talking to my friend Luke, and shout out Luke. He loves this show, by the way. I was talking to my friend Luke about it. I'm like, dude, even just listening to our own podcast, it's been beginning to help me start looking down the road 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Because I got to a point where I felt so boxed in. I could barely think past the week, let alone the day, let alone getting out of bed in the morning. And it just felt like I was trapped. I felt like a rat running on a wheel. And I could not figure out how to escape myself from my own persecution. And
will you press the arrow key on that? I don't know. Anyway, we'll let it be for a second. Yeah, okay, good. The monitor shut off, so we just
wanted to double check we didn't just cut.
Yeah, so
it's been a while, guys. We're used to the Discord episodes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's been a while since we've been in person. Bear with us. Anyway,
but yeah, living every day like it's looking ahead.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
And I noticed and again, I really want to just jump into the questions, but
do it.
I noticed when we fell, that you lose sight of that and you start living for the now.
Yeah.
And everything short term.
And all it does is just keep you there.
Yes.
It keeps you in the
and,
know.
and you lie to yourself and you say, well, without this or X or Y or Z, I wouldn't be happy, or I wouldn't,
Right.
like, it's the training wheels that keep you in that spot. But
Yeah.
at some point, you have to take the training wheels off if you want to ride a bike without training wheels.
Absolutely. Yeah. Easy as that. So what's I'm probably going to butcher this. I haven't said it in forever.
Yeah.
You will never see new horizons if you're too scared to leave the shore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So ultimately, it can be scary. See the shore as your home, your comfort, your place, your people. A lot of the times, just in your situations, we're not necessarily victims of our circumstance. We're a victim of our actions within the circumstance.
Yes.
And your inaction is a choice.
Yes.
So
yes.
if you're in a circumstance and it's not serving you, the people aren't serving you, your environment's not serving you, your career's not serving you, whatever it may be, we live in the greatest country of all time where you can make the decision to just go and do whatever you want any day, right? So it is up to you to decide whether or not you are struggling enough, you are in enough pain in your certain situation to where you want to change that.
Yeah.
So now ultimately, it's comfortable. It's really comfortable to stay in what you know.
Yeah.
And when people say they have the fear of the unknown, it's not that they're scared of what's there. It's they're scared of their inability to handle what's there.
Well, and, think about it as if you're an explorer, right? Or a cartographer, and you know every spot that you've mapped, but every time you go through it, you continue to add little details. You're comfortable because you know this tree's here, this mountain slopes like this.
Yep.
But as soon as you get into uncharted territory, if you've never done it, especially by yourself, it's terrifying because you don't know what's out there, and that alone can send your mind spiraling.
Yep.
Especially if you struggle with something like anxiety, or even if you're not like an overly anxious person, but you do have anxiety. That's a pretty normal thing for
Yeah,
people.
like every human being has anxiety,
Exactly.
no matter who you are.
And it's about and we talk about courage a lot. That's really what it takes, is a little bit of courage, understanding that if you fall, you can always get back up. But I think this would be a good segue into the episode, just because I do have like lines of questions real quick.
Absolutely.
Before we get into that, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe if you're on YouTube.
Ding!
And then
Sorry,
that was perfect. And then one more thing is I'm just happy to be here.
Okay, amen.
Oh, I wanted to talk back on the Tony Robbins thing, because you were talking about how Tony Robbins helped change your life.
Absolutely.
I was listening to George Jankos and Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins was explaining how he changed the military program. He cut the time it took to become an expert at shooting sidearms from like a week or two to like 3 days.
Yeah.
And he was creating more experts successfully. And so when he told George Jankos this, he also brought up that he had never shot a gun before. And George was like, how do you sell that to the military? And he's like, well, the guy that was supposed to help him wasn't there. He ended up having something call him away.
Yeah.
So he's like a 24-year-old kid in front of these generals. But what he said is, what he did is he analyzed he had them all shoot in front of him, and he analyzed all the patterns between them. And then as he analyzed those patterns, he could learn what all three of them did the same, and create a pattern that could work for everybody. Because we say it all the time on repeat here, the recipe for success is the same.
Right.
And that's what Tony Robbins picked up at a young age. I think we've picked that up from a pretty young age, and we've understood that. And we want to tell the whole world that the recipe isn't random. It's not just throwing in random ingredients and hoping that it turns out. It's calculating. It's learning that there are patterns, as Tony Robbins says, 3 steps. Learning there are patterns, learning patterns of people that have already created them, and then once you master that, that's when you can get to creating your own pattern. And the problem I see a lot, especially with ambitious young people, is they realize there's patterns, and then they skip step 2, and they jump to trying to create their own pattern, and then they lose so much of the experience and the practice from other people's patterns that it doesn't work out, and then they have a sour taste in their mouth.
Yeah, right. That's cool. That makes sense.
But I just thought it was cool because it was those principles that helped me kind of switch up my pattern.
Yeah.
And you went through the same thing, and it's just crazy how that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Tony, great guy.
Great dude.
If you're watching, Tone, I know you're on here sometimes.
We're waiting for your next episode to drop. So come on, Tony.
Yeah. Say hi.
But okay, so let's get into it. I wrote down some questions. I wanted to discuss these. This doesn't have to be limited to the questions, but I don't know.
Let's
I've
do
been
it.
feeling philosophical with all this alone thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll swing away.
Awesome.
What are we going
Okay,
with?
so when we say why do we fall, what do we mean by fall?
Yeah. So I think personally, why do we
Mhm.
fall, right?
Yeah.
Falling is just not getting the immediate result that we would like
Okay.
out of an attempt,
Yeah.
right?
Which I just want to put emphasis on how he just framed that, because that alone right there, I know a lot of people listen to our podcast, and I've
Mhm.
started realizing and analyzing what we say, why we say it. Some
Right.
of it, it's a little bit of fluff or a little bit of guesswork, but
Mhm.
most of it's calculated. And the way he just framed that is exactly how you have to frame falling. Notice he didn't say anything negative with that sentence. It was objective, but it had a slight positive tone behind it. That's huge right there. But sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off. It's
No, that's okay. Yeah, so I think there's just there's stuff we need to learn, right, in our
Mhm.
journeys. And the thing is, a lot of us have big visions. We have big dreams. We have massive things we want to accomplish. And sometimes we feel inadequate when we fall,
Yeah.
when we have shortcomings, when we don't reach our objective. But here's the thing is to fill those shoes, to be the person that achieves that dream, you're not going to overhaul your life overnight. You're
Mhm.
not going to be able to take a step and be there. And that's what makes it rewarding. So we get knocked down. And when we get knocked down, we say, why? Why do we get knocked down? And there's two different ways you can look at it, right? Like, why are you knocking me down? I don't want to get back up. That wasn't fun. Well, the second one is, well, I didn't do it right, right? There's something I need to learn. I'm not going to approach it that way again. Let me change my approach. Let me adjust what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
There's variables. Let's try again. And let's try again. You get back up. Boom, right back on your ass.
And
Let's
that
get
was
back
kind of
up.
going to be one of the final questions, but I like that's amazing. Because where I've been is I've personally fallen, which is my
Mhm.
next question. Have you fallen
Mhm.
recently, and what was that like?
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
'Kay.
And you're talking about how it's essentially it's to learn to pick yourself back up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cheesy because I heard it in the Dark Knight. It was when I was still like I was doing the right things and I was waiting to reap what I was sowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was that transitional period where you don't see a lot of immediate progress. That's where like a lot of people doubt themselves.
Right.
They're like, I'm doing all the right steps, but it's only been 2 weeks, dude. You've been living wrong for 2 years, and you
Yeah.
expect to see results
Right.
like that.
Absolutely.
And I was watching The Dark Knight just because movies really do kind of help get you out of your own head.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I stopped doing. I realized how many like perspective shifts that I stopped like exposing myself to
Mhm.
during this time, and it's crazy. But
Yeah.
I was watching it, and there's that scene, or it was Batman Begins, where he falls in the well,
Yeah.
and Alfred, his butler, picks him up, and
Yep.
he's like, "Why do we fall, Bruce?" So we can learn to pick ourselves back up.
Yep.
And in this podcast, we also talk a lot about how success is not a straight line,
Yeah.
right? And so that's important to note, because businesses, once you've successfully launched a business, is that all it takes? Can you just coast from there?
No.
Even if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, you
Right.
coast, you now lose your edge, and there could go the business.
Yep.
And so it's important to learn to fall as early as you
Mhm.
possibly can.
Absolutely.
Because once you're ahead of something that big and it goes wrong,
Yeah.
you'll have the tools that you need to help recreate or to fix things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And really, just to hit the nail on the head there. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's simply the pathway to it.
Yes.
You're going to fail. You're going to fall. If I told you you were 39 failures away from reaching your goal, how quickly would you fail?
Mm-hmm.
And have patience. And patience isn't about just sitting on your hands. It's about doing the hard work and knowing that the results will come in due time.
And let me tell you a quick sidestep. We've talked about patience a lot, but I've heard the saying, "Be careful what you pray for."
Mm-hmm.
Whew.
Mm-hmm.
I've always struggled with patience because I just want to see results.
Amen.
And in this world, it's easy to get in that mindset.
Yep.
And so I started praying for some patience. I'm like, it would be nice if you could just drop some patience down and I could just eat some and be
Yeah.
more patient or something.
Right. Yeah.
No, that is not what happened at all.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this episode, is because on my path to learning patience
Yeah.
in its truest sense is how I fell so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So hard. It was rough.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like the thing, you pray for patience and God gives you a challenge.
Exactly.
And the challenge is supposed to teach you patience, but you're like, Lord, I just don't want to deal with this stuff
Mhm.
anymore. And it's like, well, that's not going to give you patience. That's going to give you an
Right.
easy life, and that's going to make you weak
Mhm.
because that's what got you there. You know, you've been avoiding these obstacles. And that's one thing I talk about as an adult, man. It's so easy to just avoid challenges. It's so easy to avoid everything that scares you, what makes you uncomfortable, because you just don't want to face it.
And not to be like a fanboy of our own podcast, but there's a I don't remember what early episode where you talk about how it's not the water, because there's like what thousands or even millions of gallons of water that surrounds a boat when it's on the water.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not any of that water that sinks a boat. It's the water you let in. And I kind of was expanding in my thoughts on that, and I was like, well, that's kind of like problems, right? Because you also can't just never put your boat on the water and say I've never sunk. That doesn't count.
Absolutely.
That's quote unquote a virgin boat because it's never touched the water.
Right.
And so you can avoid the water your whole life, but all that potential, all that purpose is just wasted away.
Yeah, absolutely right. A skilled sailor was not made on smooth seas. Right.
Absolutely, I love that quote.
Yeah, just jump into it. And like I said, if you were 39 failures away from your goal, how quickly would you fail? Don't be afraid to fall. There's a lesson in every time we fall, so get back up.
Yeah. So have you fallen, and what felt like the hardest fall? If you could, maybe even a top 3, maybe.
Yeah.
Your whole life, or just in the recent history, last 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
Yeah.
Have you fallen? And what felt like the hardest fall, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's get vulnerable, right? That's what we're here for. So, as you guys remember, Riley, she came on the episode a couple times. So we separated, right? And it was all out of love. You know, we both really cared for each other, but we just weren't serving each other anymore. But ultimately, as most men can relate, right? You ask yourself, what could I have done better? You know, what did I do wrong? How can I fix this, right? So you're kind of in this rabbit hole.
And in my opinion, you should be asking those questions.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it is a great opportunity to just look at it raw.
Yeah. So eventually, right, you compare yourself to yourself a lot. And so I look back at who I was. Remember when we started the podcast, you know, I was fit, I was happy, I was always getting out there, making money, doing all these awesome things.
Full of energy, huh?
Yeah, full of energy. It was great. And through the relationship, you know, I just got complacent. I quit chasing. I quit working hard for the things I wanted in life. You know, I was content with what I had. I didn't really want more. And, you know, those were her favorite traits about me, right? I was a go-getter. I was ambitious. I was happy. I was proud of who I was. And I lost that. I lost that along the way. But, you know, I was at a point in my life where I felt that she was really the one thing like keeping me afloat, you know, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have been there. And then she was gone. Next thing you know, she's gone. So, well, there goes the one thing that was keeping me afloat. Now I'm going to drown. Right. So that's why I told myself, I'm just going to drown. You know, I'm not strong enough to get through this. I've been incapable for how long now? I'm not going to be able to get through this. And so really just rock bottom. That's where you get.
And real quick before we continue here, I just want to ask, it's never a fast descent. Well, generally, it's usually, at least for me, and that's why it's more of a question, but it sounds like a statement.
Yeah.
It was a very slow descent. You know, you slowly chisel this little piece of what you needed off, and then you slowly slim off this bit, and then next thing you know, you're left with something that you don't hardly recognize.
Right.
Is that a shared experience?
So how I viewed it, right, and how I looked at it through, you know, because then I started going to Tony Robbins seminars. I started to get a grip back on my life, start taking it back. And how I viewed it is deep down, I have an identity. Yeah. We all have an identity, and all our identity is a story we tell ourselves. So here's the thing. I had all of these attributes, all of these cool things about myself that everyone loved, I loved, yada, yada. And slowly it just got wilted away into a tiny ball. And on top of that ball, I just put layers of comfort over it. Things that were protecting me from my excuses and action, so I didn't have to act anymore. So then it was just this little shell inside of me that I've put this coat over for so long. And then I would open the coat a little bit and show an old part of myself. And I'm like, whoa, that scared me. I'm not comfortable showing that, like, because that can be taken away from me again, right? Yeah. And I don't want that to get taken away from me. So I'm just going to hide it. I don't want people to know it's there.
Yep. Did you ever have any that you hid behind that, like, you kind of lied to yourself and it was a way to allow some of the self-hatred or whatever, like self-disappointment, whatever you want to call it, kind of appease it by having something that made you feel somewhat productive?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I got stuck with that where I was like, as long as I'm going to the gym once a week, it's better than doing nothing.
Right.
Or as long as I clean my room here and there, or, like micro things that are important to do, but it's not actually a habit.
Yeah.
It's enough to go, I did nothing with my day. I did something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever have any of those?
Yeah. I remember it was like maybe my diet, right? I would, I got overweight, it sucked. It sucked. I really lost like a lot of what I've built up over the last few years. But yeah, so it would be like, well, maybe I just worked a little hard today, so I'm gonna go out. I deserve like fast food, right? So I'm gonna go pick up fast food, or like, I didn't really work out today. I didn't really go outside. I didn't really do anything I wanted, but I'll just make like chicken and rice for dinner, right? And I'm like, yes, I did something. And so all that does, because like I said earlier in the episode, until the pain of staying the same is stronger than the pain of changing, you're never gonna change.
Right.
So we all do these micro things that justify us to live within our comfort zones, and it's not painful enough to change, so we never will.
And usually the reason this state of existence is so miserable is, first of all, you want to lie to yourself. No one wants to admit like, oh, I'm at rock bottom. And honestly, if there's one thing that should be promoted on social media more, it would be pretty cool if instead of only when it's like your best moments, instead they started highlighting like when you're at rock bottom.
Right. Yeah. You post your fails, you post your losses, you post about things that you messed up on and you want to learn from.
I won't forget my rock bottom. Okay, so I'll kind of deep dive without trying to run over too many of the same details that I had shared at the beginning of the episode. So let's see how my memory is. I feel like it's locked right now. I'm feeling good. But anyways, so how it happened, I went to college, as you guys probably know. And if you're new here, I went to college. Very expensive. I was in the aviation program, learning how to fly planes. I knew it would involve loans because my parents told me before I graduated high school, we'll help you with expenses if you need it, but we will not pay a penny towards your tuition. And so that's why I was going to enlist originally. Right. Free college, duh. Well, complications with that made it so instead it was faster to get moving with my life by going to college. Right. And so I studied aviation, I got my pilot license, and then once I got my private pilot license, I ran out of money. And so I drew out a second loan, and these are really ridiculously high interest rates. If I had any financial sense, the only thing I had in my eyes, which a lot of people do, whoops, I was a little loud, but a lot of people do, is they go and they see the paycheck that'll be coming. And pilots were getting paid very handsomely, and there's a huge shortage. So I was like, well, this justifies the loan. Well, dude, it was hard for me to even get a loan. Like, I thought I was going to have to drop the program. So when I got a loan, it felt like I'm supposed to do this, because I felt like things lined up perfectly at the very last second.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would look back at that now, and not to be dramatic, I would say that was a deal with the devil. Yeah. In the sense that it was playing on my emotions. It was something I wanted immediately, and I wasn't really scared of the repercussions because they weren't real to me yet. Right. Well, fast forward 4 years. So again, go through the schooling, and then I was in this gray area where I was going to be switching to a cheaper school, but I was trying to, finish up at this other school at this point, at a specific point. And so I stopped going to class all the time, and then I moved into an apartment, so I had absolute freedom for the first time ever. It wasn't in a dorm room. I didn't live with my parents. And a little bit of irresponsibility came with that. But what really struck me in that moment was complacency, because I passed that check ride. And because it had worked out somehow each time, I just assumed it was going to keep working out. And that is terrible. I wish I never had that moment, but
absolutely.
I needed it because at that time I was so impatient. I couldn't even sit down and study hardly. Right. And that's something that's obviously been a backbone of my aviation career. Yeah. And so now, all of a sudden, these payments are due in June. And I learned this in January. That's how unknowledgeable I was about these loans. If you're going to take a loan, at least make sure you know every bit about it. I know that sounds like, oh, stupid Caleb, but yeah, I fell for it. Yeah. But anyways, so I realized that was out of the question. And for the first time, not only did I have to break up with aviation, which I was obsessed with. Right. And not necessarily break up, more like take a break. But I had to. I had no other financial choice. And then I had to come up with a plan. Yeah. And if you've watched this show for a while, you know that I'm a huge planner. Planning is it's in my DNA. Right. If I don't have a plan, I'm anxious because I do fear the unknown without a plan. Right. And so I had no plan. My head was spinning. All I could think was all the stupid things that I bought, whether it was going out to eat more than I should have, or whatever it was that I was spending money on, and also not improving myself. I wasn't doing anything to
Right.
improve myself. I picked up all these hobbies, none of which were really killer,
Yeah.
but none of which were benefiting me either.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
understand
more
that.
dangerous than a killer hobby, because it
Absolutely.
doesn't force you to look in the mirror and go, you gotta
Yeah,
change. You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah. So, but yeah, absolutely. And I think a very important, just simple one-liner here is see things for what they are, not what you make them out to be.
Yes,
Um,
yes. Because so many times today we're so focused on subjective truths
Yeah.
and being correct all the time.
Yeah.
It hurts to admit you're wrong.
Yeah.
And it makes you question yourself, but that's important.
And it's a superpower to be able to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just and most of us, right, are just naive.
Yeah.
Most of the time we know what is really happening, but we make it out to be something that fits our narrative.
Yes,
We make it out to be something that just makes us feel a little bit more comfortable so that we don't have to change.
absolutely.
But ultimately, for the best of everybody, I say this because I love you, it's important to change.
It is. And it's important to fall, because it's just like riding a bike, right?
Mhm.
I felt like I was terrified to fall off that bike.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did, I scraped my knee. And when I was probably like 5 or 6, and I had a bloody knee. And at that
Mhm.
time, I was terrified of blood.
Yeah.
When I found out we had this red stuff that oozes out, I was
Yeah.
like, oh no. And after a couple of falls, not only did my skin get a little tougher, so it didn't bleed as much,
Mhm.
but I started to realize it's not that bad. It's a little ouch.
Right.
Okay, now I know if I twist at this angle, if I'm going too fast, or
Right.
you learn, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
If you fall and you don't learn a single thing,
Yeah.
I am speaking from experience, because before I had my hard fall, and this isn't to make fun of anyone working in a factory, because I literally work in one, but I went from flying airplanes
Mm-hmm.
and being on literally the clouds
Yeah.
to down here stuck in a grubby factory where I'm killing my shoulders all day, and
Yeah.
free time's a lot harder to come by.
Yeah.
And at first I was so hard on myself. I was so hard
Yeah.
on myself. I'd beat myself up. I'd over reflect. I'd be like, how could I have been this stupid?
Right.
I'm always so calculated. And then that's when you realize you have to take it easy on
Yeah.
yourself.
Have some grace.
But what scared me, and I'll be fully honest, was I think I was too easy on myself.
Mhm.
And so then I was scared of that.
Right.
And so my brain went into survival and did the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not getting away with this time, pal.
Yeah.
Like, hate yourself, hate yourself,
Mhm.
hate yourself. That's what comes in. So yeah.
And you get glimpses of like, oh wait, actually I am okay. And then
Yeah.
it goes right back to no,
Yeah.
no,
You're like,
no.
no, you're not. Look at where you're at, right? So it's just really important to see things for what they are, not what you make them out
Yes.
to be. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. And then I wanted to ask this. Is there a pattern after the amount of times that you've fallen that you've recognized that seems to kind of appear before you fall?
Yeah. Yeah. So honestly, it's I've noticed in my life the happiest I am is when I am constantly evolving and self-growth.
Mm-hmm.
And when I start to accept my, and it's hard, it's weird to say out loud because it's not necessarily a healthy thought, so it might not be healthy for some people, right?
Yeah.
I know it's healthy for me because I've lived my whole life by this.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be continuously growing. I have
Yeah.
to be continuously changing myself to become a better human being, whether it's just caring for more people,
Yeah.
giving more things, getting more physically fit, eating better food, seeing my family more, whatever it is, small things that are making me a better person. I need to be continuously chasing that. And I notice that when I stop extending myself and then I just become complacent and hermit up, that is when I notice that I'm starting to decline.
Preach it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think this is personal. I think this is true for everything.
Mhm.
If you're not living, you're dying. If you're not growing, you are shrinking. I had a debate,
Yeah.
and this is where I realized how dangerous your environment is. Well, not realized, but remembered.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to one of my very close friends, and we were discussing how, one of us, not me, at this point, my friend was not in a forward motion spot.
Right.
He
Yeah.
would just do nothing all day. And I tried talking to him. I'm like, dude, you're really smart. You got a lot of resources.
Mhm.
You got a good brain. You work your butt off
Yeah.
when the time comes. I was like, why are you just sitting here?
Yeah, right.
Like, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. And he disagreed.
Mhm.
And that's when I was like, wow, we have a much deeper problem here.
Yeah.
Because it's true. They even say it about your teeth. If they're not whitening, they're yellowing. Like, as soon as you personally, whether it's spiritually, whether it's physically, financially.
Yeah.
If you don't touch it, it shrinks. Think about it. It's like the best way to compare it, right? Your mindset, your spirituality, your physical health.
Right.
It's like putting money in the bank, right? You're so happy you made $100,000. That's insane. So let me go put it in the bank, and now I don't have to do anything.
Right.
What's gonna happen to that money?
It's just going to become worth less and less.
Exactly. You're gonna spend it. You're gonna chip away at it without realizing, really, and then inflation is literally gonna cause it to be
Just
worth
decrease.
less. And a kind of cool way to compare it is like around you, while you're not getting better
Mm-hmm.
and you're holding what you had as it's chipping away inside, everyone around you that is working on themselves is now getting further than you.
Right.
And I don't mean that in like a scary way, but sometimes you do have to think about it like that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if I don't get back on my feet, I'm further behind now. Like,
Yeah.
and me personally, I actually am. Financially, I'm so much further behind than people that I would, not to sound arrogant, but I would say I'm financially smarter than
Yeah.
them.
Right.
And I made some bad mistakes.
Yeah. Well, and it's the story of the rabbit and the hare, right? The
Yes.
universal story. Everyone knows it, right? So consistency beats intensity
Mm-hmm.
100% of the time. You can give it all you got, and then you stop and rest
Yeah.
for however long. There goes all your work. Goes all your money. Whatever you're doing, your efforts are all just out the window, right?
Yep.
You're back and you're like, all right, well, let me just give it some more because I'll just go until I'm content again, and then I'll let it fade away. And then I'll go until I'm content again, or I'll fade away. But then the tortoise is just like, hey, man, one foot in front of the other. I'm just going to consistently become better.
Yeah.
My efforts aren't losing. Maybe I'm not moving as quickly as you are, but I'm staying consistent. And
Yes.
consistency will beat intensity.
And it's like my favorite diagram. I think I brought it up like once ever on this podcast. Is when like it's a bunch of racers and everyone started on the line, and there's one person that started way farther back, but they have like a rubber band around them, and it's just saying that don't compare yourself to where you're at now, because the end point's going to be different
Right.
for every single person.
Absolutely. And this goes with anything in life. The first time you do it, it's going to take so long.
Oh man.
And you're going to fall a ton. But the thing is, you're gathering your tools, you're gathering your resources, you're gathering your mindset, you're gathering information so that you're loading yourself up in that rubber band. And though it feels like you're falling behind because you're just falling and falling and falling, you're slowly gaining everything you need to launch forward in the next one.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens. Then this one finishes, then you're like, all right, I'm going to take a step. And you're like, holy cow, it's going so much faster than the last one because I learned everything on the way. But that's the important part, is you have to learn.
Yeah. No, when I got my private pilot license, I was like, oh man, this is easy. And then I step into the instrument flying world, which is like flying in clouds and like weather you can't see. I was like, it's just flying. Like when I tell people, they don't seem impressed when it's like fly through a cloud. It's like, ooh,
Right.
fly through a cloud. It's terrifying. You can't see anything. You
Yeah.
have to trust your instruments. You have to be able to know how to read them. You have to deep dive so much further. And then when it's just like anything else. The more you go, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Right.
And it used to drive me nuts. When I was a kid, I'd be like, I'd ask the why questions, where it was just
Why?
endless series
Why?
of why.
Yeah.
And there'd always be a point where someone much wiser, much older, and much smarter than me would say, I don't know. And I'd be like, what do you mean you don't know?
Yeah.
And now I know what they mean.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's a sign of wisdom right there, is when you can admit, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. That's funny.
And I do feel like we're never fake about anything that we talk about.
Right.
We're never just like absolutely BSing with ill intent about something to try and sound smart.
Right.
Especially on the internet, there's a lot of people that do that over and over. And then
Yeah.
when they get caught, it's like embarrassing.
I know. Maybe we should. Maybe we'd grow a little bit quicker.
Maybe that's the way to get canceled and then get more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you want to
But
hop
yeah,
in the next
so
one?
overall, I guess my final question that I wrote down is, do you think we fall for a reason?
Oh, absolutely. No matter what causes you to fall, how you fall, no matter what it is. I mean, we have a whole episode on setting precedences. And in that episode, we talk about how it's just so important in your life to be making mistakes, to be failing, to be falling. Because if you never fall, you're never going to be able to learn how to pick yourself back up. And eventually, you're going to reach a point where if you spent your whole life never having to pick yourself up, never falling, whatever, you're going to hit a point and it's going to be way too hard for you to do it. Or you're going to have to put in so much more effort because, honestly, everybody knows this, right? Our fears in life are just limits that we have never faced. So we need to face these limits. We need to face our fears, or else they just simply become our ceiling. And when they become your ceiling, you just never overcome them.
And I would like to throw this out here because we've talked about the power of not only subliminal things, but like saying things and bringing them into existence
Yeah.
because people don't understand how powerful.
It's real. It's
Yeah.
real. I always thought it was like hippie foo-foo stuff
No.
until like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I've been doing this podcast for 4.5 years now. In 10 months, for 4 years. A little inside joke. You guys didn't need to get it. So we've been doing this podcast for just over 4 years now. And, the whole thing of like, well, speak kindly to yourself because you're listening. You know what I mean? There's that thing. And I was like, oh, it's just hippie foo-foo stuff.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. But it's real.
Yeah.
And what I learned, where I learned that from was priming from Tony Robbins. And it's just the things that you just put into the subconscious mind, your conscious mind, whatever you are saying out loud, you are believing that. You're reinforcing that muscle in your body.
Yeah, which I don't know if you remember, but I was a priming nut.
I know. You
when
brought
I
up
first
priming
found
in
it.
episode 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem is I didn't have the confidence to back up. I found it, and at that point I was still super nervous to like sit in front of a camera and
Yeah.
like I was. So my girlfriend now, her name's Lauren, and we're on our way up here, and I had mentioned something about how, like, don't you notice how like unconfident I sound or inconfident, whatever.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah. I was like, well, you got to cut me some slack because what happens stays on the internet for absolutely ever. I was like, you got to cut me a little slack,
Yeah.
especially because there's nothing. You had a YouTube channel, kind of.
All right, dude. Sure. All right. I had a YouTube channel, kind of.
But, like, it wasn't this. It wasn't
Right.
deep diving into things. It wasn't things that could be argued or debated because
Right.
it is a philosophy. And just like anything, there's other philosophies you can have.
Mm-hmm.
And we discuss all the time that we're not a happy all the time, be positive.
Yeah. Toxic positivity. That's not us.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
talk about all the time how to remain the most positive is to purposefully and on your own bring up your shortcomings and analyze them because now you're in control.
Yeah.
You're bringing the ball into your court, and it gives you authority, it gives you a sense of control, and it gives you a level of confidence.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's falling, right? Falling is just about having the confidence to pick yourself back up. It's about reinforcing that confidence. Like you were just saying, the ball's in your court. You're able to make those decisions for yourself, have accountability, learn who you truly are, and love it and own it, right? Because it's really important to understand who you are, what you want, so that you stop dealing with the BS of life, right? And as Tony Robbins always says, the BS of life, belief systems, right? So we're not cursing here today.
Yeah.
It's the belief systems of life. So everyone's got their own belief systems, which are most of the time just BS, right? And like mine for a while, my limiting thought was just that I'm not capable. And that was my BS. That was my belief system. And eventually I just said, all right, let's prove it to myself. I'm capable. And then I got knocked on my butt and I stood back up, knocked on my butt, stood back up. And eventually I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep getting up. So if
Yeah.
you want to keep knocking me down, go for it. But I'm just going to keep getting back up.
Well, it's like that. Really, you can call it corny. I love it. It's so Rocky 6 is one of the lesser Rocky movies for sure.
'Kay.
But it's one that came out in like 2008, I think.
Mhm.
And it was supposed to be like, oh, Rocky's super old now and he wants to go back and compete and show that he can do it. And there's the most famous, I swear I hear it in thousands of motivational videos where it's like, in life, it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
That's how winning is done.
And that's exactly right, though. That's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
It's not about how hard you swing, right? Otherwise, and it drives me nuts because especially when I hear people uneducated in the fighting realm of things talk about who they think's going to win a fight. What do they always look at? They look at size,
Right.
speed, and really those are maybe height.
Yeah.
Those are like the top
Size.
3 things.
Yeah.
But what does a guy generally look like that knows what he's about to be watching or is like, some sort of expert, whatever?
Mhm.
They're going to be looking at fight styles. They're going to be looking at reach. They're going to be looking at punches landed
Yeah.
in the fight. Like, you're going to know what to be looking at. And so it drives me nuts when people, and that's why I love underdogs so much.
Right.
Because you might look like you're about to get shredded, but then what do you know? He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He knows 4 different other styles.
Yeah,
of
right.
MMA, you know what I mean? And he used to be a Marine or something.
Right.
And that's where it just comes into play of just it focus on the right things in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know. Do you have anything else that you want to add to today's episode?
Guys, it's great to be back in person. I love it. Even just being in like a studio as opposed to my bedroom.
Yeah.
that I'm finally decorating, by the way.
Absolutely.
Love it. But yeah, if you've just fallen, at first take it easy
Mm-hmm.
because especially if you're anything like us, you'll tear yourself apart before the world can even get to you,
Yep.
and then the world gets to you. And
Yep.
you need something supporting you.
Yeah.
You need just go back to the basics. Also, don't, as you said, don't try to do a one night overhaul. Okay,
Mhm.
focus on the micro things.
Yeah.
But don't let that make you complacent either.
Right. Yeah. Because don't be naive.
Mhm.
You know what you know. So see things for what they are, not for what you make them out to be. Brick by brick, have some patience.
Absolutely.
One foot in front of the other. If you get knocked down, get your ass back up.
Absolutely. Because the fight is not over until you win.
Amen. So anyway, I think we can wrap it up there.
Yeah, I think this. How long even was this episode?
About 40 minutes.
Wow.
So anyway,
Okay. That makes me excited because we used to not have the camera recorded into the setup, and so we'd have a 30-minute timer, or else we
Yeah.
had to just try to remember where it went.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you guys had a phenomenal Labor Day or Memorial Day, and I hope that you guys have a great week.
And real quick, I guess I do have one more thing I want to say. We have a series coming out, and I'm very excited. It's got some super big positive outlook news attached to it. But you
Mhm.
got to stick around for the whole series because we drop hints here and there. You won't even know. Until the very end, we have a pretty big announcement.
Yeah, very big announcement. So stay tuned. It's exciting.
And we waited till the end of the video. That way only the real ones know that it's coming this early. We'll have social media stuff on it. But we figured the ones that stick around for the whole, we always leave a little extra something. A little cookie
Yeah.
for those that stick
That
around
nobody's
for
ever
something.
going to hear.
What's that?
I said that nobody is ever going to hear.
That's not true.
Yeah.
If you're listening at this point, prove Gabe wrong.
Yes.
Show some love because the longer episodes do get more people that are
Yeah.
like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah, let's start a chain in the comments of people just saying, Gabe, you were wrong.
But also,
Just
guys,
so it looks embarrassing for me. That'd be great.
make everyone have to figure out what that even means.
Yeah.
And we'll title card a section. Gabe was wrong here.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's awesome to be back. We have some fire episodes coming out for the summer months, peak summer, and I'm so excited. This is just an intro. This is a warm up.
Yeah.
We're gonna go deeper, maybe even a little longer for this series. We're gonna turn up the podcast.
Turn up the heat.
Yeah.
Turn it up.
So
All right.
thank you guys for sticking around this long. You know we absolutely love you. That's one more thing. I know I keep saying one more thing.
Yeah.
But when I fell, those comments in our YouTube and
Yeah.
our Spotify and our DMs, it's just it fills up an empty cup. for sure.
Absolutely.
And it's a beautiful thing. So
Yeah.
hopefully we do that for you guys. That's always our goal, and a lot of you have done it for us.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. One more thing.
Yeah.
Happy Monday.
again, we're warming back up. Happy Monday.
Peace.
Bye.
Man.